The rain came down in torrents, turning the bustling city streets into a maze of glistening reflections and hurried shadows. Ethan Harris gripped his umbrella, his polished shoes splashing through shallow puddles as he weaved between pedestrians. The world blurred around him, a cacophony of horns, hurried footsteps, and distant rumbles of thunder. He had one goal: make it to the boardroom on time. But then he saw her. A young woman stood on the corner, clutching a crying baby beneath a threadbare blanket. Her hair was soaked, clinging to her face, and her trembling hand struggled to keep the blanket secure around the child. Her eyes darted around, desperate yet determined, as if she was looking for a miracle. Ethan hesitated, his phone vibrating in his pocket with reminders of the meeting he couldn't afford to miss. Yet something about the scene, her helplessness in contrast to his own privilege, made his feet stop. "Excuse me," he said, stepping closer, lowering his umbrella over her and the baby. "Are you all right?" The woman, Ava Reed, looked up, her lips quivering. Ava hesitated for a long moment before finally nodding. Ethan led her carefully to his sleek black car, opening the door and shielding her from the rain with his umbrella. She murmured a quiet thank you as she settled in, holding her baby close. Inside the car, the tension was palpable. The rhythmic sound of raindrops on the windshield filled the silence, broken only by the soft cries of the baby. Ethan adjusted the heat, glancing at Ava through the rearview mirror. "Where can I drop you off?" he asked gently, trying not to sound intrusive. Ava glanced down at her daughter, avoiding his eyes. I don't have anywhere to go." Her voice cracked, and for the first time, Ethan noticed the weight she carried, not just in her arms, but in her soul. As the car rolled through the rain-soaked streets, Ava slowly began to speak. The words came hesitantly at first, then spilled out in a torrent as she recounted her struggles: an abusive relationship, a family that turned their backs, and the relentless fight to keep her baby safe. Ethan's jaw tightened as he listened, his hands gripping the steering wheel. He couldn't ignore the ache in her voice or the hopelessness in her story. The car slowed as they approached a quiet intersection. "You can't stay out in this weather," he said firmly, his decision made. "I have space at my home, just for a while, until you figure out your next steps." Ava stared at him, her expression a mix of gratitude and mistrust. "Why would you do that? You don't even know me." Ethan met her gaze in the rearview mirror, his voice calm but sincere, because sometimes people just need a little help. Her silence stretched as the rain continued to pour, the car inching forward as if waiting for her answer. If you're enjoying the story so far, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. There's so much more to come. Stay with us to see how this journey unfolds. Finally, with a deep breath, Ava nodded. "Okay. Thank you, Ethan's home, a sprawling estate filled with sharp lines and modern design, had always been a sanctuary of silence. But the quiet was quickly replaced with the soft sounds of baby Lily's giggles and the faint shuffle of Ava moving through the space. At first, Ava seemed out of place, her tentative steps echoing as if she feared she might disturb something. But Robert Harris, Ethan's father, noticed her uncertainty and made it his mission to make her feel at ease. Despite his frail condition, Robert had a warmth about him that immediately put Ava at ease. "Books are a window to the world," Robert said one afternoon, offering her a tattered novel from his personal library. "Start here. You might find something you never expected." Ava accepted the book with wide eyes, marveling at the kindness of a stranger. In turn, she spent time sitting with Robert, listening to his stories and helping him with small tasks. She even started reading aloud to him, her soft voice filling the room like a soothing melody. For Ethan, the shift in the atmosphere was unmistakable. Ava and Lily had turned his structured world into something unpredictable, but oddly comforting. He found himself lingering longer at home, watching Ava's quiet determination and Lily's innocent wonder. Through their presence, Ethan began noticing things he had long overlooked: the laughter of a child, the simple pleasure of a shared meal, and the surprising strength in small acts of kindness. Something was changing, though he wasn't quite sure what, and just like that, life in the Harris household felt a little fuller, a little brighter. Days turned into weeks, and Ava slowly began to find her footing. What started as a temporary refuge was becoming something more, a chance to rebuild. One morning, Ethan handed her an envelope over breakfast. "What's this?" Ava asked, glancing at the crisp white paper. "It's payment," Ethan said simply, "for everything you've done around the house and for helping my father. You've earned it." Ava hesitated, the envelope heavy in her hands. It wasn't just money, it was dignity, a small step towards standing on her own again. Later that evening, as they sat on the terrace overlooking the city, Ava found herself opening up. She shared a part of herself she hadn't dared to voice in years, a dream she thought she'd left behind. "When I was younger," she began, her gaze distant, "I wanted to be an architect. I used to sketch buildings, imagining how they'd look in the real world. But life got in the way." Ethan leaned forward, intrigued. "What stopped you?" Ava shrugged, a hint of sadness in her smile. "Reality, I guess, and now, I wouldn't even know where to start." "You start by believing you can," Ethan said firmly. His words were simple, but the weight of his conviction struck a chord. If it's something you care about, you owe it to yourself to try. Ava looked at him, the flicker of hope battling the shadow of doubt in her eyes. For the first time in years, the idea didn't seem so impossible. The days were filled with a quiet rhythm, but the moments between Ethan and Ava began to feel different. Their conversations grew longer, spilling from casual talks about books or Lily's antics into deeper, more personal territory. There was an ease between them, a connection that neither could ignore. One evening, as they sat in the library with a cup of tea, Ethan spoke softly. "You know, you're the first person in a long time who's made this house feel alive." Ava looked up from her book, surprised. "I think it's Lily who deserves the credit for that." Ethan smiled, his gaze lingering. "It's not just her?" The words hung in the air, their weight unmistakable. Ava felt her cheeks warm, her heart racing in a way she hadn't experienced in years. Their bond deepened as time passed, but not without its struggles. Whispers began to circulate in Ethan's social circles, judgmental glances and veiled remarks followed whenever Ava was mentioned. "She's using him," one acquaintance had said at a gathering, loud enough for Ethan to hear. Ava tried to ignore the talk, but Ethan wouldn't stand for it. "Let them think what they want," he said one evening, his voice steady. "They don't know you like I do." Ava's heart ached at the strength in his words. For the first time in a long while she felt seen. Truly seen for who she was, not where she had come from. The grandeur of the ballroom was overwhelming, its crystal chandeliers casting warm light over the sea of impeccably dressed guests. Ava stayed close to Ethan, feeling out of place in the opulent setting despite his reassuring presence. As they navigated through the crowd, a striking woman with silver-streaked hair and an air of quiet elegance approached them. Her piercing gaze settled on Ava, and her expression shifted, first to curiosity, then to something deeper. "You must be Ava," the woman said softly, her voice tinged with emotion. Ava hesitated, her brow furrowing. "Yes, and you are?" "Eleanor Blake," the woman replied, offering a small, hesitant smile. "I've heard about you." The conversation was polite at first, but Eleanor's lingering glances and carefully chosen words suggested there was more she wanted to say. It wasn't until later in the evening, when they found themselves alone on the terrace, that Eleanor's composure cracked. "I need to tell you something," she began, her voice trembling. Something I've carried with me for years. Ava listened intently as Eleanor shared a story that sounded almost too incredible to believe. A past filled with heartache, loss, and desperate attempts to find the daughter she had been forced to leave behind. The revelation hit Ava like a tidal wave. She gripped the railing, struggling to process the truth. Her emotions a whirlwind of disbelief, anger, and longing. Eleanor reached out tentatively. I know this is a lot, and I don't expect forgiveness overnight. But please, Ava, let me show you how much I've missed you, how much I've searched for you. Ava looked at her, tears welling in her eyes, unsure of what to say. The only thing she knew for certain was that her world had just changed forever. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind for Ava. Eleanor, determined to make up for lost time, became a constant presence in her life. Her support wasn't just emotional. Eleanor insisted on helping Ava chase the dream she'd almost forgotten. You're meant for more, Eleanor said one afternoon, sliding a brochure for a prestigious architecture school across the table. Let me help you get there. Ava hesitated, her fingers brushing the glossy paper. She glanced at Ethan, who nodded with a quiet smile, silently encouraging her to take the leap. Enrolling in the program felt surreal. The days were long and demanding, but for the first time, Ava felt like she was moving towards something entirely her own. Meanwhile, Eleanor blossomed in her role as Lily's grandmother, filling the house with laughter and warmth. Robert, too, found renewed energy in the growing family. Ava often caught him sharing quiet moments with Lily, his soft chuckles carrying through the halls. Together, they were forging something new. A patchwork family stitched together by resilience and love. Ethan, ever the steady presence, stood by Ava's side, marveling at how far they'd come. The house, once a quiet retreat, was now alive with the hum of connection and the promise of brighter days ahead. The day of Ava's graduation arrived, and the air was thick with anticipation. Dressed in her cap and gown, she stood on the stage, her heart racing as she looked out over the sea of faces. The years had flown by, each one a step toward this moment, this accomplishment she'd once thought was out of reach. When it was her turn to speak, Ava's hands trembled as she took the microphone. The applause died down, and a quiet expectation filled the room. I've come a long way, Ava began, her voice steady but filled with emotion. From the girl who thought her dreams were impossible to the woman standing before you today, I owe so much to the people who have been by my side. She glanced at Ethan first, her eyes softening. To Ethan, thank you for believing in me when I didn't believe in myself. You showed me what it means to truly live, not just exist. The audience was still, caught in the weight of her words. Ava continued, turning to Robert, who sat proudly in the front row. To Robert, your wisdom has been a guiding light. I wouldn't be here without your steady presence and encouragement. And then Ava's gaze shifted to Eleanor, who stood next to Robert, her eyes filled with tears. And to Eleanor, or rather, to Mom. Ava's voice broke slightly as she said the word for the first time, the years of longing and healing woven into those two simple syllables. Thank you for giving me the love of a mother I never thought I'd have. You helped me find my way back to who I truly am. The room erupted in applause, but Ava barely heard it. She was overwhelmed by the weight of the moment, by the family that had come together to support her through it all. After the ceremony, they celebrated in a quiet corner of the world they'd built together. There was no fanfare, just laughter, smiles, and a deep sense of fulfillment. Ava had come full circle, her journey from despair to triumph now complete. And as she looked around at the faces of the people who had helped her reach this point, she knew one thing for certain. This was just the beginning. As Ava looked around at her family, Ethan, Robert, Eleanor, and little Lily, she couldn't help but feel a deep sense of gratitude. They had all come together in ways she never could have imagined. What started as a single act of compassion had rippled through their lives, transforming them all in ways that no one could have predicted. Her journey was a testament to the power of resilience, the quiet strength to rise after falling, to keep moving forward even when the road seemed impossible. She had learned that love wasn't just something you receive, it was something you give, and when shared, it multiplied. And perhaps most of all, she had learned about the incredible power of kindness. That one decision Ethan made to stop for a stranger in the rain had changed everything. It had created a new family, brought healing, and turned brokenness into something beautiful. As they sat together, celebrating the new life they had built, Ava understood that sometimes the most unlikely of beginnings can lead to the most extraordinary endings. Life could be hard, but with love, support, and the willingness to help others, anything was possible. In the end, their story was a reminder of the incredible things that can happen when we show up for each other, with compassion, with kindness, and with an open heart.